The moment I saw her hand hover over my glass, my life split into two versions. In one, I laughed, toasted my retirement, and trusted the woman I'd built everything with. In the other, I survived. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 58 years old. And 3 hours earlier, I had sold my cybersecurity firm for $47 million. The house was glowing that night. Glass walls overlooking the lake, investors laughing, champagne flutes clinking. My wife, Evelyn, moved through the room like she owned the future. Maybe she thought she did. Her father stood beside the bar, already red-faced from celebration. He never believed in me. Said tech founders were gamblers in suits. I was reaching for my drink when I saw it. A small vial. Clear. Quick movement. Her back shielding it. One drop. She didn't know I was watching from the reflection of the window behind her. My heartbeat didn't spike. It slowed. I smiled. Walked toward her. Kissed her cheek. And when she turned to greet another guest, I switched the glasses. Her father lifted the one meant for me. To Daniel, he shouted. We all raised our glasses. He drank. 6 seconds later, his smile disappeared. And the sound he made next wasn't human. The glass shattered before he hit the floor. For a second, no one understood what they were looking at. His body jerked violently, chair tipping backward, wine bleeding into the marble like a slow confession. Someone screamed. I didn't move. Evelyn did. She was at his side instantly. Not panicked. Not shocked. Focused. Call an ambulance, she said, too steady. I knelt beside him. His skin was pale, lips already losing color. Not choking. Not seizing randomly. This was systemic. Controlled. I looked at Evelyn. And for the first time in 25 years, I didn't recognize her face. She checked his pulse. Then looked at me. You switched the glasses. Not a question. A statement. Time slowed. She leaned closer, voice low enough only I could hear. That wasn't for you. The ambulance sirens pierced the distance. Guests backed away. Investors whispered. My $47 million celebration was turning into a crime scene. I stood slowly. Then who was it for? I asked. She held my gaze. For him. Paramedics rushed in. Oxygen mask. For urgency. As they wheeled her father out, his eyes locked onto mine. Not fear. Not anger. Recognition. Like he knew something I didn't. Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She just watched him leave. Then she turned to me and said something that changed everything. You've just made a very expensive mistake. The guests were ushered out within minutes. My head of security locked the gates. Investors left in tight-lipped clusters. The lake outside was still. Inside, my living room smelled like spilled wine and panic. Evelyn stood near the fireplace, arms folded, watching me the way a chess player watches someone who just touched the wrong piece. You think I tried to poison you? She said calmly. You put something in my glass. And you switched it? Yes. She exhaled slowly like I disappointed her. My father has a severe reaction to beta blockers, she said. They destabilize his heart rhythm. He knows that. His doctors know that. Pause. I know that. I felt something cold move through my spine. That wasn't poison, she continued. It was a microdose sedative. For you. For me? I asked. She stepped closer. You haven't slept in 3 days. You were going to stand up there and say something reckless during the toast. Something about restructuring. Something that would tank confidence. My jaw tightened. I was going to announce changes to the board. Exactly. The room went quiet. Her father hated the deal structure. He'd argued against selling majority control. He wanted influence. Control. You think I drugged you to protect you? I said. No, she replied softly. To protect the deal. Sirens faded in the distance. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A calm male voice spoke. Mr. Mercer, this is Thomas Keene from Blackridge Capital. We need to discuss what just happened tonight, and why your father-in-law was never supposed to drink from that glass. I stepped away from Evelyn before answering. Explain, I said into the phone. Thomas Keene didn't hesitate. Your father-in-law has been attempting to block final transfer authorization through secondary influence channels. He met with 2 minority stakeholders last week. I looked at Evelyn. She wasn't surprised. He was planning to challenge the payout structure tomorrow morning, Keene continued. Delay tactics. Possibly regulatory noise. And the drink? I asked. A precaution. Not lethal. A mild sedative to prevent improvisation. Improvisation. That's what they were calling it. You knew? I asked Evelyn after hanging up. She didn't deny it. He would have sabotaged everything, she said. You think this deal closes without stability tonight? My company, I said quietly. Our future, she corrected. I studied her face. Calculated. Strategic. Controlled. You drugged your own father. She tilted her head. He agreed. Silence. That was the first crack. He what? He's been unstable since the cardiology diagnosis. The deal stress made it worse. We needed him calm tonight. My mind replayed the collapse. The timing. The 6 seconds. Beta blockers, I said slowly. Her expression shifted just slightly. You didn't know about that interaction, did you? No, she hadn't. The sedative combined with his existing medication. And I had switched the glass. The ambulance wasn't taking him to a hospital for observation. It was racing against cardiac arrest. Evelyn's voice dropped. You weren't the only one making moves tonight, Daniel. My phone buzzed again. Message from Keen. Board emergency vote scheduled. Without your father-in-law. I suddenly understood. This wasn't about celebration. It was about control. And I had just destabilized the wrong side. The hospital called at 1:12 a.m. Critical but stable. That was the phrase they used. Not dead. Not safe. Balanced somewhere between consequence and recovery. Evelyn didn't cry when she heard. She didn't collapse. She simply nodded once as if a contingency had activated. I need to make a call, she said. Keen? I asked. She didn't answer. I went upstairs instead. My office still smelled like cedar and ambition. $47 million wired in tranches. Majority control transferred. Minority oversight retained. On paper I had won. But something wasn't aligning. Why sedate him tonight? Why risk it at all? I pulled up the sale documents again. Page 214. Clause 9.3. Deferred voting authority in case of medical incapacitation of advisory shareholder. Advisory shareholder. Her father. If incapacitated at time of emergency vote. Authority transfers temporarily. To executive spouse. My stomach went hollow. The board meeting at 8 a.m. Without him. With her. Not sabotage prevention. Acceleration. I walked back downstairs slowly. She was on the terrace, phone to her ear, voice low. Yes. Temporary authority triggers at 24 hours if he's listed as medically compromised. Pause. No, Daniel doesn't know that clause exists. I stopped breathing. The lake outside reflected moonlight like broken glass. She turned and saw me standing there. Didn't flinch. Just ended the call. You always were brilliant at building systems, she said. But you never checked who owned the back door. For the first time that night I felt something close to fear. Not because she had outmaneuvered me. But because I realized how long she'd been planning it. You structured the deal with that clause, I said. She didn't deny it. You were exhausted, Daniel. You trusted the board. You trusted me. I let out a slow breath. Clause 9.3. Temporary executive authority in case of medical incapacitation of advisory shareholder. Which meant if her father remained classified as unstable for 24 hours, she would control his voting block. Combined with Blackridge's shares? She could override me. She stepped closer. This isn't about hurting you, she said. It's about securing influence before you dismantle everything we built. I built it, I replied quietly. Her jaw tightened. We built the life that made it possible. There it was. Not greed. Not hatred. Control. The ambulance report buzzed onto her phone. Condition worsening. Cardiac rhythm unstable. She stared at the screen for a fraction too long. That wasn't part of her calculation. You didn't account for the medication interaction, I said. Silence. That was the first genuine crack in her composure. I walked past her to the bar. Picked up the empty vial she discarded in the sink earlier. Still half full. Measured. Precise. I turned it between my fingers. You drugged the wrong man tonight, I said calmly. She shook her head. No, Daniel. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You did. My phone buzzed again. Message from Keen. Board vote moved forward. 6:30 a.m. emergency quorum secured. They weren't waiting 24 hours. Which meant one of two things. Either they didn't need her temporary authority, or someone else already had it. I didn't sleep. At 5:40 a.m. I was in my office reviewing shareholder access logs. Something felt off. If the vote had been moved to 6:30, it meant quorum was already guaranteed. Which meant they didn't need Evelyn. Which meant They didn't need me either. My phone rang at 6:02 a.m. Thomas Keene. Daniel, he said calmly, you should join the call. I thought Evelyn was the contingency, I replied. Pause. She was. Until 3:17 a.m. Cold slid through my chest. What changed at 3:17? Your father-in-law regained consciousness. Silence. He requested immediate legal counsel, Keene continued, and he revoked temporary authority before medical classification was finalized. I closed my eyes. He'd woken up, and he protected me. However, Keene added carefully, he also disclosed something. Of course he did. He informed the board that the sedation plan was mutual, but the clause wasn't his idea. My eyes drifted toward the terrace where Evelyn stood, staring at the lake. It was drafted during a private legal review 6 months ago, Keene said. By whom? Another pause. By you. The room tilted. That's impossible. You signed the addendum during due diligence. Memory flickered. A late-night signing session. Dozens of revisions. Trust in my legal team. Trust in my wife. Daniel, Keene said quietly, the clause was inserted through your attorney's office. My attorney. Not hers. Which meant one thing. This wasn't Evelyn's game. It was mine. Or someone had made it look that way. Keene's final words were almost sympathetic. The board wants clarity before they vote. I hung up slowly. Evelyn turned toward me. For the first time that night. She looked afraid. For a long moment we just stood there. Two people who had built an empire together, now trying to calculate which one of us had been holding the knife. You didn't draft that clause, Evelyn said quietly. No. And I didn't either. The fear in her voice wasn't performance. It was recognition. Which meant the only person left. My attorney. Grant Holloway. He had handled every major negotiation. He'd pushed for late-night revisions. He'd insisted on protective language. I had trusted him for 12 years. At 6:28 a.m. I joined the board call. Grant was already there. Composed. Daniel, he began smoothly, given the instability last night, the board believes interim leadership restructuring is necessary. Using clause 9.3? I asked. A slight pause. Yes. I leaned back in my chair. Grant, read the final line of the addendum. Silence on the call. Papers shifting. Then his voice changed. That clause activates only if the advisory shareholder is medically incapacitated and executive majority confidence drops below 60%. And has it? I asked. Another pause. No. Because overnight I had called 3 minority investors myself. While Evelyn thought I was upstairs spiraling. I sold the company, I said evenly, not my awareness. The board vote collapsed. Grant resigned within the week. My father-in-law survived. He confessed Grant had approached him months ago with protective restructuring. Evelyn and I didn't divorce. But we rewrote everything. Not contracts. Trust. $47 million bought me freedom. That night bought me clarity. And I learned something no exit strategy teaches you. The most dangerous betrayal isn't the one you see. It's the one you help design.